Hey y'all, welcome to a new What's for Dinner. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing 5 dinner recipes that I have recently made for my family. If you are new here, I'm cooking for my husband and myself and our 2 kids. We have a 9-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son. Everything that I'm sharing today came out absolutely delicious, so let's go ahead and jump on into the recipes. First up, I'm going to be making something that I have been seeing all over my For You page on TikTok, and that is this cattle drive casserole. Now, I'm not making it like most of the videos that I have seen on there. After watching that and getting inspired, I just went to Pinterest and typed it in, and I went with the one that had a lot of great reviews on it. So it is a little bit different. I think both versions look good, but I started off by browning up 1.5 pounds of ground beef. And while that was cooking, I went ahead and grabbed a green bell pepper, washed it off, and then I'm just chopping it into bite-sized pieces. It didn't specify which color of bell pepper to go with, so I just did green, but keep that in mind. Use whatever your favorite color of pepper is. I feel like I did kind of a bad job on cutting that, but I finally got that done. And then by the time that was ready, my meat was fully brown. So as you can see, there is a lot of grease. So I'm just going to quickly go and drain that off. And then I'm going to add it back to my skillet. And I'm going to season it heavily with onion powder. The recipe does call for a diced onion to be added in place of that, but if you know me, I don't like actual onions, so that's what I'm doing. I also threw in that bell pepper, and then you'll need a package of taco seasoning. I'm just going in with the Great Value taco seasoning. I'm also going to throw in a 1/2 cup of water, and as soon as I get all of that stirred together good, I'm just going to let this simmer on about a medium heat for about 10 minutes. That way that bell pepper can start to soften. So while that's going, I'm going to grab a block of sharp cheddar cheese and I'm just going to start grating it with my little cheese grater. It only takes a couple of minutes and it's a lot cheaper doing it like this and it tastes a whole lot better. So to a small bowl, I'm adding in a 1/2 cup of mayo. I'm also going to do a 1/2 cup of sour cream. I'm going to take a 1/2 cup of that cheese that I just shredded up and toss that in the bowl, as well as a 4-ounce can of these chopped green chilies. I did not drain that can and I made sure to buy mild. That way it will not be too spicy for my family. But I'm going to give that a good mix and that will be set to the side. We will layer that into the casserole later on. So my ground beef is ready. I turned off the heat and now I need to make the dough. So you're going to need some Bisquick. I'm adding 2 cups to my bowl. And you'll also need about 3/4 of a cup of water. Now on TikTok, all of those girls are using the Red Lobster biscuit mix, and I could imagine that that would be really, really good in this. But I will say this is one of the most annoying doughs that I believe I have ever worked with. I do have a 9x13 casserole dish out. I sprayed it with some Pam. But back to the dough situation, it was super sticky. Like, I feel like it needed a little bit more Bisquick. I kept alternating between my hands and that spatula, and I had to keep on spraying it with the Pam. It was just a whole thing, but I finally got it worked out. I had my oven preheated to 350. I'm going to pre-bake that for about 5 minutes to give it a head start. And then I'm going to pull it out, and I'm just going to layer on that taco seasoned ground beef mixture. Just taking the back of my spoon, spreading that out into an even layer. And then you're going to want to top that with a can of Rotel. I'm just using the Great Value version. It didn't say to drain it, but I decided to drain it because I figured if I didn't, that dough on the bottom could possibly become soggy. So I'm just spraying that out a little bit with my fork. And now I can start layering on that sour cream and mayo mixture with the green chilies in it. I found it easiest to just kind of plop it on there by the spoonfuls and then spread it out. And I feel like not draining that can of green chilies helped me out because it kind of thinned it out a little bit and made it a whole lot easier to spread. So lastly, I'm going to take that cheese and just start layering it on the top. No certain amount, just until it looks good to you. And as I always say, you can use any type of cheese that you want to. We are just big fans of sharp cheddar. So I'm going to bake that at 350 for 30 minutes. And here is what it comes out looking like. You'll know it's done when the top is nice and melted and it's kind of bubbling around the edges. I just cut it into big squares and dinner was ready. You can throw some sides on there if you want it to, but we were happy with it just as it was. It was very filling and it just turned out so good. It has so much flavor. I will not change a single thing about it other than maybe trying to adjust the dough recipe a little bit so it's not so aggravating to work with, but it also reheated really well the next day, which is always a huge bonus. I have been craving like a big, fully loaded salad. So that's what we're gonna do. And I'm gonna top them with my favorite fried chicken tenders. This is the best fried chicken tender recipe. I have been making it for many years and it is a family favorite. So I picked up a family size pack of chicken tenders at my Save a Lot. I do like to go in and remove the tendons. It is optional, but I just don't like the chewy pieces in it, so I do it with a fork and a napkin. And then I put those in a bowl, and you're going to need some buttermilk. I'm using whole buttermilk, and it is such a key ingredient. I'm telling you, I add in a lot. I make sure it covers the top, and then I go in with my hands, make a big old mess just to make sure that every piece and inch of it is covered. Not only is it going to make these chicken tenders taste amazing, it's also going to tenderize it, and it just gives it the best texture. It is so important. I can't emphasize it enough. So I do that in the morning, cover it, and let it sit in the fridge all day to marinate. I also went ahead and cleaned up my work surface, washed my hands, and I'm going to go ahead and make some homemade ranch right after that. So you need a cup of mayo. I'm using Hellman's, but I do like Duke's a little bit better for homemade ranch, but we got that big jar at Costco on sale. That was what was open, so that's what I'm going to use. And I also do a cup of buttermilk, the same buttermilk I used to soak that chicken in. If you are not a buttermilk ranch fan, you could do milk. It'll still be good, but this definitely makes it like restaurant style ranch. You need some ranch seasoning mix. I always buy the bottle, so 3 tablespoons equals a packet. And I know a lot of people say that the restaurant style ranch packets makes it even better. I'm sure I've done it in the past, but this is the one I typically use. I did buy a packet though, and I am going to test it to see if it's better than that ranch seasoning mix, but you can just tell by looking at that. That's some good ranch. So again, set that in the fridge. That's going to set all day to develop the best flavor. So fast forward to dinner time. I drained off the buttermilk from my chicken and I just laid it all out on a piece of wax paper. And I'm going to go in and season it. I'm using some sea salt, black pepper, and some garlic powder. I did flip all of those on over and I season them the same exact way. Now, to keep in mind, if you are not used to removing the tendons from chicken, it will kind of split the chicken a little bit. But since you're frying it, it all like comes back together, so it's no biggie. So now I'm just working on my egg wash. I've got 2 eggs in that bowl, a little bit of water, and I'm going to pour in a decent amount of that Frank's Red Hot Sauce. You can use any hot sauce that you want to. It does not make it spicy. It just gives it extra flavor, and I like it so much more with the hot sauce versus like without it. So to a Ziploc bag, I'm adding in 2 cups of all-purpose flour. The recipe that I'm going to link in the description box that I somewhat follow, it calls for 4 cups of flour, but I've made it enough to know that that is way too much. You only need 2 cups, and you could even get by with adding a little bit less than that. I did season that flour with salt, pepper, and paprika. And then I just take my chicken, I throw it in that flour mixture, give it a good shake, and then I take it out, dunk it into that egg wash, and then I'm going to throw it back into the flour a second time so that it's getting a double coating of that breading. And I'm just going to place that on a cookie sheet that I have a like wire rack over top of. I forgot what it was called for a second. But I originally was doing it one by one. That got old quick, so I typically do it this way. I just throw all the chicken tenders in that bag and give it a good shake and just go about it that way. But there is all of the chicken after I got it all perfectly breaded, and now I can get my oil ready and start frying these up. I love to use my cast iron skillet for frying chicken, so I'm using the biggest one I have, and I always cook it in vegetable oil. I added, a good amount. And I'm just going to drop those in there once the oil is hot. When you've been doing it for so long, it just has a certain smell when you know it's ready. It also has a shimmer to it. But definitely don't drop them in before the oil is ready or it'll just mess them up completely. And I do fry these just a few at a time. It really doesn't take that long, but you never want to overcrowd things when you're frying them. They just don't brown up properly. They don't cook properly. This is just the best method. And I do like to cook these for about 2 to 3 minutes per side. For these, I did do 3 minutes per side because these are like on the bigger side. I love buying chicken tenders at my local Save-A-Lot because, for one, they are the best price out of all the stores that I go to, and they're just like the perfect size. Like, these are fat. So again, 3 minutes per side is what I do, but if yours is smaller, maybe do 2 minutes per side. And I like to flip them over with a fork. That way I don't tear them, like the breading won't tear. And then when they are fully cooked, that's when I'll go in with my tongs to remove them. And I'm just placing them on a paper towel lined plate. As you can see, they are perfectly golden brown. My kids won't eat salad yet, so they just had the chicken tenders, and I also made them some fries. So these chicken tenders were disappearing as quickly as I could get them cooked up. But I am going to start assembling my salad. So I'm just using some iceberg lettuce that I prepped earlier in the day. I prepped all of the salad ingredients earlier in the day so that this will go smoother. I chopped it, washed it, dried it. And then I'm going to start adding some cherry tomatoes. Typically, I'm not the hugest fan of cherry tomatoes, but recently we went on a little spring break trip to Tennessee, and we went to JT Hannah's, which is a restaurant, and I ordered their side salad, which was about the only thing I really liked that I got, and they had cherry tomatoes on it, and they were so delicious. So I was like, when I get back home, I'm going to start giving those more of a chance. And, like with any produce, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. You just got to give it a few chances. So I also added some cucumbers. I added some sharp cheddar cheese that I shredded. I did also cook up some bacon and just went in and cut it with scissors. So we had a big old plate of bacon to add to the salads. I am adding some croutons. This is just some bagged croutons. Again, I got those at Save-A-Lot. I'm just kind of adding everything in the corners and around the sides to make it as pretty as possible because I just love that. And I really love hard-boiled eggs in my salads. So I just cut one into wedges, so I'm just carefully placing that on there so they don't completely crumble. And then I'm going to take one of those chicken tenders. I picked a big one. It was the perfect amount for this salad. I chopped it down the middle, and then I went in the other direction to chop it into bite-sized pieces. And that's going to go right down in the middle of my salad. You could also add buffalo sauce to your chicken before you cut it, or even barbecue sauce, or really any sauce that you think would be good with it. And, you could change your salad up that way. But I really love these chicken tenders just the way that they are. I'm not joking when I say that they are perfect. I am confident in saying that. It is just one of our family's all-time favorite things. So now I'm going to take some of this Salad Supreme seasoning, and I'm going to season the cucumbers and the eggs and the tomatoes a little bit with that. Those are 3 things I feel like always need some type of seasoning. But there's a little overview of that delicious, beautiful salad. Don't forget about that ranch I made. That's going to be the perfect final touch to it. I did put it in one of these little side condiment containers just to make it, look even better. But I am going to go ahead and drizzle that all over the top. And before anyone says it, I was not making this salad to try to be healthy. I know that it's not healthy. I make it because it is so dang good, and Josh and I love it. Another recipe that has been going around that has really caught my attention are these chuck roast tacos. I first saw it on Instagram, so that's the video that I will link down below in my description box. But you need a chuck roast. I know that those can be a little bit pricey, but I always watch for the sales, and anytime those go on sale, I make sure to pick up one. And I did vacuum seal it, and I like to write down everything on the bag about what I paid, the size of it. So this one's a little over 2.5 pounds. And I got it for a little over $13. So you need a 9x13 casserole dish. You're just going to pop it in there, and you're going to season it. The seasonings are very simple. It's just taco seasoning, sea salt, and black pepper. You would not imagine how flavorful that this comes out. I did not expect that with just these simple seasonings, but as you can see, I did do it to both sides. I'm massaging it in, pressing it in, and I'm kind of, taking the sides to what was left in the pan. So I'm going to cover it tightly with some tin foil, and I'm going to put this in the oven at 325 degrees. The rule of thumb is to cook it for an hour per pound. So I cooked mine for 2.5 hours. So here's what it looks like after that time frame, and it's shredding apart easily. You don't want to shred it like super finely. You kind of want it in big chunks. And with that same fork, I'm just giving it a good stir so that that fat that kind of rendered out as it was cooking is fully coating the meat, because we're going to pop it back in the oven at 425 to kind of crisp it up a little bit, like crisp up the ends. And she said 20 to 25 minutes. I ended up pulling mine out around 15 minutes, and it is going to make your whole house smell so good. So I cooked up our favorite tortillas. It's the Tortilla Land ones. I did make a homemade guacamole that I'm spreading over the tortilla, and then I'm adding on a good amount of that meat, and I'm just going to top it with some fresh cilantro. I did also make some cilantro lime rice. This just comes out of a package. I will show it here in a second. I buy those at the dollar store, and I also placed a lime wedge on the side to squeeze over the taco. These came out so amazing. I knew they were going to be good, but these really exceeded my expectations. There's the package, by the way. I cooked up 2 of those. Riley and I absolutely loved it. Boston and Josh did like it, but they didn't care for the crispy end, so I would probably skip that step next time. If you're looking for a fun new recipe to try out that is going to wow you, then you need to make this cheesy buffalo meatloaf. I promise you, it is amazing. You need a pound of ground beef and a pound of sausage. Yes, this is just some breakfast sausage. This caught my attention the most, and it works out in the best way in the end. I'm going to crack in 1 egg to that bowl, and I'm grabbing some breadcrumbs. It didn't really say what type of breadcrumbs, but I just assumed plain would make the most sense. So I am going to measure out a 1/2 cup of those, toss those in the bowl, and I did modify the recipe here. Instead of like fresh onions and garlic being sauteed and then added, I just did the powdered versions. Use whatever cheese you want to, but I'm using this Vermont extra sharp white cheddar cheese. I shredded it up, and it worked out so well in this dish. I did measure out a cup of that cheese that I just shredded up, and that's going to get mixed in directly with the meatloaf. You can use buffalo sauce. That's what the recipe calls for. I didn't have any, so I'm just using the Frank's hot sauce. I was not worried about that at all because I prefer that in my buffalo chicken dip versus like buffalo sauce. So I did a 1/2 cup of that. You need 1 block of cream cheese. I just zapped it in the microwave for like 30 seconds and then cubed it up with a butter knife. Threw the whole thing in with the meat, and then the not so fun but necessary part is to get in there with your hands and mix it well. I never like to work with a meatloaf for too long, but since this had the sausage in it, it did take just a little bit longer. It was also super weird because of the really cold meat and then the warm cream cheese from the microwave. It was just super odd, but I just kept on going until it looked something like this, and then I'm gonna grab my pan. And y'all, I finally got a meatloaf pan. Y'all have been telling me for years to get one of these. Josh got me one, and this was my first time using it. I can't even tell you how excited that made me. But I sprayed it down with some Pam cooking spray, plopped all that meat down in there, and I'm just taking a spatula and pressing it in and just kind of smoothing out the top. It's going to go in the oven at 400 degrees for 30 minutes, and then I'm going to pull it out, and I'm going to add a 1/4 cup more of that hot sauce to the top, or your buffalo sauce if that's what you want to use. And I'm taking my silicone brush, spreading that out evenly. And then I'm just going to take the remainder of that cheese and I'm going to sprinkle it over the top and kind of spread it out to make sure it's, fully covered. And I'm going to finish that off in the oven again at 400 degrees for 20 more minutes. So a total of 50 minutes. And here's what it looks like when it's done. You always want to let your meatloaf rest for at least 10 minutes before you try to slice it. That way it doesn't completely crumble. I don't always follow that rule, but anyways, I pulled that pan out and put it on a plate, and look at all that grease left behind. Like, I wish I had this thing sooner. It is perfect. I've always had an issue with grease in meatloaf, and it wasn't dry at all. It was still perfectly juicy. I know it doesn't look the most appetizing, but you just have to trust me on this one. I served it with some of these Bob Evans mashed potatoes. I have not bought these in a hot minute. I got those on sale. Usually I'm all about those, but for whatever reason that night, they just weren't really hitting, and neither was that steamed broccoli. I don't know what it was, but that meatloaf was definitely the star of the show. It It tasted so much like a sausage ball, but like a buffalo version of it. And I mean, I can't even tell you how much we loved it. If you like sausage balls and you like anything buffalo, then you need to get these on your meal plan ASAP. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. Lastly, I'm going to be making a Marry Me chicken tortellini. So I'm adding 2 tablespoons of olive oil to a big skillet. I finally got myself an olive oil dispenser, and I've been loving that thing. It helps so much. I did take 2 boneless, skinless chicken breasts, and I diced that up into little bite-sized pieces, threw it in my skillet, and then I'm just seasoning it with some salt, black pepper, a little bit of Italian seasoning, and some paprika. And then I just go in and give everything a really good stir. That way the seasonings can coat everything. And then I will spread it back out, leave it alone for a bit, flip it halfway through, and then, yeah, it don't take no time at all. Just wait until there's no longer any pink and everything's nicely browned, and then I'm going to remove that to a separate bowl and set that to the side. This recipe did not call for any salt, not on the chicken or in the sauce, so I just wanted to mention that because I am going to link it in the description box, and I totally think y'all should add salt unless you are on like a low sodium diet. But we like salt. To that same skillet, I've added a little bit of butter. I did a couple of spoonfuls of minced garlic from the jar. I did about half of this jar of sun-dried tomatoes. I just took those out of the oil and sliced those thinly. It's not something I use that often, but every time I do, I really, really enjoy those. Really good. So I sauteed those for about 30 seconds, and then I added in a cup of chicken broth and 2 cups of heavy cream. I'm going to season that with the same ingredients I use to season the chicken. So paprika, Italian seasoning, black pepper, and then, of course, some salt. I'm going to give that a good stir. I have it on about a medium-high heat, and I'm waiting for it to start bubbling like so. And at that point, I'm going to add in a cup of Parmesan cheese. I did shred it myself, and I know that I say that a lot, but when it comes to certain recipes, I think it's important. And in my experience with Parmesan, I always have the best luck with freshly shredded Parmesan cheese. So I melted that in, and then I'm going to toss back in my cooked chicken. I also grabbed 2 big handfuls of fresh spinach and just gave those a quick chop, threw those on in the sauce, and then I'm going to grab a bag of frozen cheese tortellini. This is a 19-ounce bag from Walmart, the Great Value brand. I love that it gets thrown in frozen, because, you know, it makes it a true one-pot dish, really saves some time. Once it started bubbling like this, I set a timer for about 5 minutes. That way the tortellini could cook, the spinach would wilt, and the chicken could heat back through. So I started plating it in my daughter's bowl before I realized I didn't show the finished product. As you can see, it is still pretty liquidy, which that's not a deal breaker for us. We like things saucy, and, you know, we absolutely loved it. Maybe it's because of the frozen tortellini. Once it cooled down, it did thicken, but here's my plate. I topped it with some Parmesan cheese, and I served it with some toasted sourdough bread and butter, and it was just a huge hit. I think my son loved it the most. He is the pickiest eater, but he had 2 bowls, and then he ate the leftovers the next day. So that's all I got for y'all in today's video. I hope this helped with your meal planning. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all in my next one.